I think habits are what create lasting change. And that's what we're talking about with this whole discussion. Whether it's morning routine, evening routine, whatever, about being more intentional, it's creating habits because we're good at habits. I'll tell you a habit. Actually, I love coffee. We were talking about coffee earlier. I love coffee. I like one of my favorite things about my body is I wake up every morning. I've got a new coffee allowance that my body allows me to have more coffee. And then I have coffee until like Dan was talking about, I probably shouldn't have anymore. So I love that. I love every morning waking up with a new coffee allowance, but it's relatively new. I've only been drinking coffee for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. Spent my life as a tea drinker before that. Then I switched over to coffee. But when I switched over to coffee, I looked at it, it's like, okay, I'm going to take on this habit. And I decided at that point that if I'm going to take that habit on, I didn't want that habit to have any calories. So I decided I was going to drink black coffee. Now, I think black coffee is the answer, that we should drink black coffee. But I decided I was going to drink black coffee. I didn't want to take on calories. And I also didn't want to take on caffeine. And I didn't want to create that dependency on caffeine. So I said, if I'm going to take this habit on, it's going to be black coffee and it's going to be decaf. And newsflash to all the skeptics out there, you actually can have really, really good decaf coffee. It exists. You just have to seek it out. So that's just this idea of being intentional with a habit.
That's super funny. I actually had a very similar introduction to coffee. I did not care. I didn't really like coffee. And it was not till I was probably, I was like probably 24, probably 23, 24, something like that. And I literally decided like, I'm going to start drinking coffee. And it wasn't something that I liked, but what I did like was energy drinks. And I liked Red Bull and I liked Rockstar and I liked Monster. And I would be drinking one pretty much every day, which like, I don't know. I didn't notice any negative effects from it and stuff. Like, I don't know, I was 23. But at the same time, I was like, all right, this is probably not like super good. This is a lot of sugar. And I was like, a lot of people really love coffee. And it seems to be one of those things that can be a bit of an acquired taste. And so I'm just going to be like, cool, I'm just going to decide that I'm going to like coffee and then go and like coffee. But it was the same sort of thing. It was like, yeah, I was going to just drink black coffee because it was like, okay, well, the goal is to not be drinking a whole bunch of sugar each day. So if I drank a bunch of coffee, a bunch of sugar each day, then it would just be the exact same thing, right? And the funny thing was it was only like a week. And then I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, this is good. I like this. Now I really like coffee. I've been drinking coffee for quite a while now.
I love coffee too, but I started on mochas. I started I was like, it was, I guess, the equivalent of those like energy drink things that you were doing. It's like high sugar. You know what's great in the morning? A bunch of fat, sugar, and cream and all that stuff right there, and shoot that back. And I would do that, have a breakfast sandwich in the morning, and then rock all day. Like that was me in my 20s. And yeah, it was right around a time I was working with a coach and I wasn't super happy with where my waistline was and how I was feeling and all those other things. So I looked at my diet and there were 2 things I needed to cut out. And I made a commitment for 1 year. I'm going to have absolutely no mochas because that was one thing that was definitely not serving me at that level. And the other was this frozen pizza that I was eating way too much called Delissio. They're gone out of business now, I think, because I stopped buying them. There was literally so many of these I was eating a week. And I will say, like, that one choice that I made for a year, I've never gone back. I transitioned into having coffee and other things that serve me, black coffee, I should say, without any of the extras. But man, you make those commitments where you can just maybe shave away some of the things that don't serve you in the morning. It doesn't always have to be adding things to your routine. Sometimes it's just changing or shifting a few things that will empower or bring something bigger for your day than it was, before.
Chris, you started a few minutes ago asking about what do people get wrong. And I think a lot, Dan spoke to the should, and you just spoke to something that I thought was really important. You said, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this commitment. I'm going to try this for a year. And I think that can be super powerful. Like one of the things I wrote down that I wanted to talk about that people mess up is that you do have a review. And when I first learned about doing the morning routine, again, I mentioned it was from my friend Eben Pagan, and he said, I'll review this once a month, which isn't a big, huge thing. It's just like every month I'm going to sit down and say, well, do I want to change anything? And so I think that you're not going to create a solution forevermore for every situation. But what we're talking about is being intentional and creating the day that you want, and that day will create the week, and the week will create the month, and the month will create the year, and the year will create the lifetime. So you heard Dan talk about taking on a new habit. Heard Chris talk about taking on a new habit, eliminating stuff from his life and saying, I'm going to do this for a year. You could say, I'll do it for a year. Or you could say, I'm going to do it for 30 days. I think 30 days is probably the minimum to try. There's all kinds of research on how long you have to do something to create a habit. And I think a lot of that stuff is misquoted and there's a lot of disagreements. But I think 30 days is a good number. I'm going to try this thing for 30 days. And then I think going back and reviewing after those 30 days is super powerful. And then, Chris, I got one other really important thing that I think people really mess up. And I think that most people don't even know they're messing this up. You want to know that one?
I do. What is this thing people are often messing up with their daily routines?
Yeah, it's all about the transitions. And it's the transition from one thing to the next in your routine, or it's a transition from, if we're talking a morning routine, waking up to actually starting that routine. And so I mentioned for me, it's hydration, but then it like right next to my water, which I put out the night before. So the morning routine actually starts the night before. So I fill up a half a gallon glass jar of water. And I know I'm going to go through one and a half of those a day. So I'll fill that up. It's on my counter. Sitting next to that on the counter is my phone, because I'm going to take my phone and I'm going to walk over for my meditation. So first, that water's all set up. I pour into a glass, drink the glass. Then the transition to the meditation is all set up because that phone is right there. And I know where I'm going to go sit and how I'm going to be in my meditation. And then actually, Chris, I didn't mention this to you, but now one of the things another thing I've added to the morning routine is right after the meditation, I'll play a little bit of guitar just to myself, just noodling around. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 15 minutes, but it's just, it's such an amazing thing to do after that meditation. It puts me in I could just feel that vibration of the guitar. It's just, I love it. But the guitar is sitting there right next to where I'm going to be in my meditation. So I've thought through all the transitions from one activity to another. And so I think transitions are where our lives are lost. That's where we end up picking up our phone and we open up social, or we look at our email, or we look at our texts. And it's so easy to get distracted in the transitions, and all of a sudden it's an hour later. So really, if part of your routine is going to the gym or working out, knowing exactly where your shoes are, where your workout clothes are, where everything is, everything you can do to smooth those transitions. And those are the type of things you can work on later in the day when it's not about the willpower. It's about just setting those things up. It's about becoming inevitable. It's about creating a situation so that you go through the important things of your life without expending any willpower.
Hey, Launch family, one last thing before you go. If you haven't yet, go check out GetYouLaunched.com. We actually have some really great free resources for anyone who's looking to get your business launched. So go to GetYouLaunched.com, sign up with your email, and we'll send you out some free training. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.